So back on the idea of the narrative, because it's been 2020. It feels like you probably, I have no idea. I'm making these up, but just every year you have 5 major narratives to deal with, and it feels like in the last 10 months we've had 35 different narratives to try to disentangle.
Yeah, right. So the big stuff that would ordinarily be a narrative avalanche in years before is like, oh, okay, well, I guess it's Friday, so see ya, right? It's really been amazing. Yeah.
And you see that visually in your. Sorry, Adam. Go ahead.
No, it's cool. And I want to get to the maps because they are absolutely fascinating. One of my favorite things. But I wanted to get your thoughts on just speaking of narratives, because one of the reasons why I was late to the party in terms of embracing the importance or the urgency of response about the COVID pandemic is the fact that there was a complete absence of narrative urgency in the previously sort of respectable media, right?
Yep, but absolutely right.
But that's fine. I stopped paying much attention to them years ago, but I have always paid attention to markets as a signaling mechanism. And what was so shocking to me, so jarring to me in this episode, and actually over the past 3 or 4 or 5 major episodes, the Trump election, Brexit, et cetera, was how markets have so consistently gotten it exactly wrong, not just in magnitude, but in sign.
Do you remember your tweets? That tweet that you sent, it was like, it's Teflon market. It was 2 weeks before the crash, and every bad news that came out of China, the S&P would go up. And you wrote a tweet saying, this is Adam saying, my God, this is a Teflon market. Like, clearly, you said something with regards to clearly this isn't a thing, right? Because the markets were telling you a completely different story. Anyway.
Yeah. So how do we reconcile this? This is not just pandemic. There's 5 or 6 just massive stories over the last 3 to 5 years that the market has just gotten, like I said, the sign completely wrong on. But that wasn't really, like, typically you had this, the market has this topping pattern, and it's been a completely different characteristic of markets in the modern era. And I say sort of modern era, the last 5 years. Can you make any sense of that?
Yeah, I'll say 2 things. The first is that I've only felt, let me back up a second. So the hedge fund I used to run, my focus was on the short book. Right. And if you're a short seller, you're just wired that way. Right. I hate it. I don't like being a short. I mean, because you're always seeing the flaw in things, and, you tend to be just kind of, it wears you down. Right. Frankly, being a short seller, but that's how I'm wired. It just is. And, you do it long enough, and you start kind of distinguishing between, I'll say, kind of market stories, and how you've got to play the short. Being a short seller is like playing poker, right? Because you have to fold a lot of hands, and you can't get impatient, and you can't go on tilt, and you have to play for what the pot will give you, right? There have been 2 times in my life when I felt in my bones that, okay, this is a systemic shock, that the market narrative is focused over here when they should be focused on the real world, the real economy. This isn't something where there's an easy fix in market world for what will happen in the real economy. And that the other time I felt it in my bones, right, was going into 2008, after Bear Stearns was taken out in the street and shot, right? Because what I knew was that the story that systemic risk is good and the systemic risk is off the table, that was bullshit, right? Because I knew the prices that they were carrying, residential mortgage-backed securities,
the toxic debt on their, or assets, depending on how
Angelo Mozillo at
yeah.
Countrywide. You're listening to him, give his quarterly call, and he's saying, "Yep, we kind of got a little problem here. It's this. I remember this. The call is clear as day. He said, "Yeah, people keep talking about the subprime. I get it, but it's the real problem for us is the Alt A, right? The stuff that's better. It's not subprime. It's the alternative A class. Anyway, we don't have to get all back into that. And I just remember that conference call like a ton of bricks, and just knowing that the whole world is not ready for this, because there's this $10 trillion asset class that cannot withstand a nationwide decline in home prices, right? So that I felt that in my bones when the market, rallied in April and May of 2008. February of this year was the only other time I have felt it in my bones that there is a real world crisis that I am on top of, that I've been immersed in, and I know, and that I've been around markets long enough to know that they have got this wrong. And there's not a market solution to come out of, nowhere, whether it's the Fed or what have you. Now, the aftermath, the April and the May, the bounce back, I get it. And that's how you have to do shorts, right? Shorts happen in punctuated fashion. They're not forever things. You can hold a long position forever. A short, you make your money and you get out. And but those are the two times in my life when I've truly felt it in my bones.
And the signs were there in terms of the narrative, because I think we were talking about how mainstream media got it all wrong and they were so late to the game, and they definitely were. But the signs were there. We were talking about this earlier, Rodrigo, earlier in the year. When you start seeing whole provinces and cities shut down, and then all of a sudden Italy shuts down, and the mainstream media in North America hasn't caught on to it. If you're something of a keen observer, you're like, okay, I don't care what the mainstream narrative is saying. No one shuts down a country.
Richard and I were getting our
we were way ahead at result.
Oxygenators and
yeah, me too.
Our masks, and everybody thought we were crazy.
Yeah.
And that big short would have happened for you, Ben, were it not for the three-body problem: Fed, ECB, BOJ, sort of the one gravitational pull that matters now in markets, which is central bank.
Oh, for sure. I mean, market world is so disjunct, disconnected from real world, but this was a real thing, so in March, this is when the chickens came home to roost. But yeah, Rodrigo, so right about, Italy was like, and this is why I was just kind of crawling out of my skin. It's like, guys, I mean, this isn't, let me back up a second. Wuhan, China has excellent medical care. Yeah, China in general has an outstanding, I'll say, top of the line medical system, right? But you were looking in Italy, and you don't see this as just a crystal ball for what's going to happen here. It was stunning. But again, to your point about mainstream media, look, and this is true today as well. Everyone sees things through the lens of Trump, anti-Trump, Democrat versus Republican. And COVID was no exception. What was different about COVID, right, was that both the White House and his opponents, at different times and different points, didn't want to embrace the danger that was COVID. I mean, the Democrats embraced it after it became clear that it was a crisis, but leading up into it, when Trump is saying, "Oh, I'm banning flights from China," right? The knee-jerk anti-reaction to Trump is, "Oh, how racist is that?" And
they both got on down
in their own celebration. And it's just like bullshit. It's just such bullshit.
Yeah.
And Dr. Gupta on CNN saying, "Well, the flu kills more people," and it's like, oh. Anyway.
No, one trusted institution after another, and trusted political party, whatever trust that political parties had at that point, it's all gone now, right? Like even I think I read this morning that the Trump administration is trying to push through a vaccine. And let's say, I don't even know whether it's true or not, but clearly now I see it through the lens of, oh, Trump's trying to get elected. He wants to be able to, well, what if I'm wrong, right? There's no signal there anymore from trusted institutions trying to do the right thing for their communities. And
yeah, no, it's all been either noble lies or just outright lies for their own self-interest. It's just been a betrayal of trust time after time after time. And it's like when you have a teacup and you break it, you can glue it back together, but it's still a broken teacup, man. And it's always going to be a broken teacup.